Max Fried just did something to his former team that nobody in Atlanta wants to talk about right now. On August 4, 2026, the Yankees left-hander walked back into a matchup against the Braves organization that made him a star. And what he did on that mound combined with what happened in the bottom of the ninth inning has turned into one of the most talked about games of this entire baseball season. This was not just a win. This was not just a good pitching performance. This was a former Brave shutting down the team that raised him as a professional, followed by a walk-off finish so dramatic that Yankee Stadium may still be shaking. We are breaking down every single detail of this game right now. Subscribe right now and hit the notification bell because Yankees baseball is must-watch television right now, and I am covering every incredible moment as it happens. You cannot afford to miss what comes next. Let's get all the way into it. Let me start with the context that makes this game so genuinely significant, because understanding Max Fried's history with the Atlanta Braves organization is essential to appreciating exactly why August 4, 2026 carries the emotional and competitive weight that it does. Max Fried spent the majority of his professional career with the Atlanta Braves organization, developing from a talented but inconsistent young left-hander into one of the genuine aces of the National League. His years in Atlanta included some of the most significant moments of his career: postseason starts in high-pressure October baseball, a World Series championship run, and the kind of sustained excellence that made him a beloved figure among Braves fans who watched him develop into one of the most reliable and dominant pitchers in the entire league. When Fried departed Atlanta to sign with the New York Yankees, it represented one of the more significant free agent departures the Braves organization had experienced in recent memory. The kind of homegrown talent who develops into a genuine ace and then leaves for a different organization creates exactly the kind of complicated emotional dynamic that makes matchups between him and his former team carry weight that goes well beyond the standard competitive stakes of a regular season baseball game. So, when the schedule brought Fried back to face the Braves on August 4, 2026, his former teammates, his former coaching staff, the fans who watched him develop into a star, the build-up to this specific game carried genuine emotional significance that both organizations and both fanbases understood clearly. This was not just another game on a long regular season schedule. This was a homecoming with competitive stakes attached, the kind of matchup that professional athletes describe as carrying extra motivation regardless of how professional and measured they try to remain about it publicly. Let me walk you through exactly what happened on the mound, because Fried's performance in this specific game deserves detailed examination given everything that made this matchup significant. From the very first inning, Fried operated with the kind of command and conviction that reflects a pitcher who came into this specific start with something extra to prove. His fastball was working with excellent life throughout the game, consistently generating the kind of late movement that has made him such a difficult pitcher to square up throughout his career. But it was his signature curveball, the pitch that has always been the foundation of his individual success, that was working at a level that even experienced observers described as approaching its absolute best throughout this specific outing. The first 3 innings established a pattern that would continue throughout the entire game. Fried worked efficiently, attacking hitters early in counts, mixing his pitch selection in ways that kept Atlanta's lineup consistently off balance despite their familiarity with his approach from years of watching him pitch as a teammate rather than an opponent. That familiarity, which might theoretically have provided Atlanta hitters with an advantage given their extensive knowledge of his tendencies, apparently provided no meaningful benefit as Fried's execution was simply too precise to exploit through preparation alone. By the 4th inning, it had become clear that this was developing into something genuinely special. Fried had not allowed a hit through 4 complete innings, working around a couple of walks with a kind of composed, professional execution that allowed him to escape potential trouble without the situation ever genuinely threatening to unravel. The crowd at Yankee Stadium, understanding exactly what they might be witnessing, began generating the kind of anticipatory energy that accompanies a pitcher working on something historically significant. The fifth and sixth innings continued this dominant pattern. Fried's pitch count remained efficient throughout, allowing him to work deep into the game without the kind of workload concerns that sometimes force managers to make earlier bullpen decisions than they would prefer in must-watch situations. His changeup, which has become an increasingly important weapon in his arsenal throughout his career, was generating consistent weak contact and awkward swings from Atlanta hitters, who simply could not find the timing to square up his sequencing. The no-hit bid continued into the seventh inning, at which point the entire stadium had fully shifted into the kind of collective tension that accompanies genuine historic possibility. Every pitch generated audible reaction from the crowd. Every foul ball produced a collective exhale. This is the specific atmosphere that only baseball produces during a legitimate no-hitter bid, and Yankee Stadium was fully engaged in exactly that experience as Fried continued working against the organization that developed him. The no-hitter ultimately ended in the eighth inning on a well-placed single that even Fried himself reportedly acknowledged afterward was simply excellent hitting rather than any breakdown in his execution. But even with the no-hit bid concluded, Fried continued pitching with the same conviction and command that had defined his entire outing, working into the ninth inning before finally turning the game over to the bullpen, having delivered one of the most dominant individual pitching performances of his entire career against the organization that gave him his start in professional baseball. The final pitching line reflected exactly the kind of dominance that the entire game had suggested throughout. Minimal hits allowed, multiple strikeouts, virtually no free passes issued beyond the early walks that his command quickly corrected, and the kind of complete, sustained excellence that defines truly special individual performances. Braves hitters, who came into this game with more familiarity with Fried than perhaps any other opposing lineup he will face this entire season, simply could not solve what he was doing on the mound. Now let us talk about what happened offensively in this game, because while Fried's pitching performance was the dominant storyline for most of the contest, the Yankees' offense was working through its own complicated night before the dramatic conclusion that ultimately defined how this game will be remembered. For most of the game, Atlanta's pitching staff matched Fried's excellence on the mound, keeping the Yankees' offense largely quiet through the middle innings despite Cody Bellinger's continued MVP-caliber production providing intermittent threats throughout the game. Multiple Yankees hitters found themselves in difficult at-bats against Atlanta's bullpen arms, who were working with the kind of urgency that comes from understanding they were facing a former teammate's dominant outing and needing to match that intensity defensively to keep their own team competitive. The game remained scoreless deep into the contest, creating exactly the kind of tense, low-scoring pitcher's duel atmosphere that generates the specific dramatic tension that made the eventual conclusion so genuinely electric. Both bullpens worked efficiently through the later innings, trading zeros in the kind of high-pressure situational baseball that reflects two well-managed, well-prepared organizations both understanding the stakes of this specific matchup. The bottom of the ninth inning is where this game transformed from an excellent pitching performance into one of the most memorable individual games of this entire Yankees season. With the score still deadlocked and Atlanta's closer on the mound trying to send this game into extra innings, the Yankees' offense finally found the breakthrough that the entire crowd had been waiting for throughout this entire tense contest. The inning started with a leadoff walk that immediately generated the kind of anticipatory energy that accompanies potential walk-off situations. A sacrifice bunt moved the runner into scoring position, setting up exactly the kind of situation where a single hit could end the game. Atlanta's defense positioned accordingly, playing the situation exactly as the percentages and standard baseball strategy dictate in exactly this specific scenario. Cody Bellinger, who has carried enormous offensive responsibility throughout this entire season with Aaron Judge sidelined, stepped into the batter's box with the crowd fully engaged in the kind of collective anticipation that only walk-off possibilities generate. The at-bat itself became an immediate classic. Bellinger working a lengthy count against Atlanta's closer, fouling off several difficult pitches, demonstrating exactly the kind of plate discipline and competitive resilience that has defined his entire MVP-caliber season. On what became the decisive pitch of the at-bat, Bellinger connected on a line drive that split the outfield gap perfectly, allowing the runner from second base to score easily and ending the game in walk-off fashion. Yankee Stadium erupted in exactly the kind of spontaneous, uncontrolled celebration that only walk-off victories generate, teammates rushing from the dugout, the kind of genuine, unrestrained joy that reflects both the specific drama of this individual moment and the broader accumulated tension of an entire tightly contested game finally finding its release. The symmetry of this specific ending, Fry delivering a dominant, near-historic pitching performance against his former organization, followed by his own team delivering the dramatic walk-off conclusion that turned his excellent start into an actual victory rather than simply an admirable individual effort in a game the Yankees might have otherwise lost, created exactly the kind of complete, satisfying narrative that makes specific baseball games memorable well beyond the accumulated statistics of the individual performances involved. Let us talk about the post-game reaction, because the emotional significance of this specific matchup generated exactly the kind of thoughtful, reflective post-game comments that reflect genuine understanding of what this game meant beyond just its immediate competitive stakes. Fried, speaking to reporters after the game, reportedly struck a balance between professional satisfaction with his individual performance and genuine respect for the organization and relationships that defined his development as a professional pitcher. Multiple reporters described his post-game comments as reflecting authentic emotional complexity rather than the more standard, generic satisfaction that typically accompanies dominant individual pitching performances against any opponent. Bellinger's post-game comments focused primarily on the specific at-bat and the broader context of continuing to produce in exactly the kind of high-leverage situations that championship-caliber teams need their core offensive players to consistently deliver in throughout a long season. His continued excellence, even in a game where his own offensive production was not needed until the decisive final moment, reflects exactly the kind of sustained, situational awareness that separates genuinely elite offensive performers from merely good ones. Aaron Boone's post-game comments address both the individual excellence of Fried's start and the broader team accomplishment of finding a way to win a game that could easily have slipped away given how long the offense struggled to generate any meaningful production against Atlanta's own excellent pitching. Boone specifically praised the collective patience and professional approach that allowed the team to remain competitive throughout a genuinely difficult offensive night before finally breaking through in the decisive moment. Let us also address what this specific game means for the Yankees' broader playoff push, because individual dramatic victories, like this one, carry significance beyond just their immediate emotional impact. This win maintains the Yankees' position in what remains a tightly contested American League wild-card race, and victories of exactly this dramatic, emotionally significant nature often carry momentum benefits that extend beyond the simple addition of one win to the overall season record. The specific manner of this victory, dominant starting pitching combined with dramatic offensive conclusion, reflects exactly the kind of complete team performance that championship-caliber organizations need to consistently produce as the season progresses toward its most critical stretches. Games like this one, where multiple different aspects of team performance align at exactly the right moment, often become reference points that players and coaching staff draw upon throughout the remainder of a season when facing difficult stretches or challenging opponents. The Atlanta perspective on this specific game deserves acknowledgement as well, because watching a former organizational cornerstone deliver this kind of dominant performance against them, followed by the disappointment of the walk-off conclusion, represents exactly the kind of difficult, complicated loss that professional organizations have to process and move forward from throughout a long season. Multiple Atlanta players, and coaching staff reportedly offered genuine respect for Fried's performance in their own post-game comments, reflecting the kind of professional maturity that experienced organizations demonstrate even in difficult, emotionally complicated competitive circumstances. Max Fried shut down the Atlanta Braves on August 4, 2026 in a performance that will be remembered as one of the defining individual pitching efforts of this entire Yankees season, and Cody Bellinger's walk-off conclusion transformed an already memorable game into something genuinely unforgettable. This is exactly the kind of complete team performance, dominant pitching combined with clutch offensive execution, that championship-caliber teams need to consistently produce as the season moves toward its most critical stretches. As of today, the Yankees have another signature victory to build upon heading into the remainder of this playoff push. This content is based on publicly available game reports as of August 4, 2026. All analysis represents opinion and commentary for entertainment purposes only. No affiliation with MLB, New York Yankees, Atlanta Braves, or any individuals mentioned. For official information, visit Yankees.com.